Saddle up your horses.
Pitter patter, let's get at her. It is another episode of the Manely Broncos podcast, and we want to thank you guys for hopping in the stream with us. We have a great show lined up for you guys today. There's a lot to talk about, whether that be the Denver Broncos or some other teams. And there's a little bit of some backstory behind that, and in terms of a certain topic, and we'll dive into that. And so that's gonna be a fun conversation. And plus, I'm going to do a little bit of a twist, Brandon. I know we talked about, doing like the Mount Rushmore of players because when people think of Mount Rushmore, they obviously think all time. Well, if you actually recall, we had a conversation right on Manely Broncos about like who are the top players, right, in Denver sports. Well, it also seems fitting that, especially since Nikola Jokic has in fact won that NBA Finals and the NBA championship, where does he rank in terms of that? So we're going to actually have that conversation at the end of it.
Hi, what up, bro?
No
one knows he's been kidnapped. Just kidding. He's actually going to be in Colorado tomorrow. We just can't, unfortunately, we can't find a way to get together because we're all going to be far apart. But
sadly, Maddie has had to deal with just some personal matters that he's had to deal with, and so he's dealing with that. And then obviously Brandon and myself are keeping the Manely Broncos afloat. But Ty, thank you so much for hopping in and jumping on the stream with us. And so we're gonna have the Mount Rushmore conversation, like the typical Mount Rushmore conversation. But then I think that the twist on this
is what is the typical Mount Rushmore? What?
Like the typical one, which is like the all-time players that you would put.
Yeah, what's the twist, though?
The Mount Rushmore of current Denver sports players.
Oh. Now that's a much harder question.
Yeah. So, which is the twist? Because, right, we had that conversation before, obviously, the live stream, but we had that conversation about we had that conversation about because remember, is Nikola Jokic above Cale Makar? Is Nikola Jokic above Nathan McKinnon? Exactly.
We had that conversation.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So now that he's won the NBA Finals, it seems kind of fitting to have that conversation. So we'll talk about that.
All right.
Yeah. So we'll have that conversation. But before we dive into any of that, we want to remind those who are listening to the Manely Broncos podcast or even watching it that if you are watching this on Twitter, we appreciate you guys, the fact that you guys are actually watching it on Twitter. But sadly, if you guys are wanting to contribute to the show, you will have to go to another location, and that being Facebook or YouTube. And if it is on YouTube, it is the MHRT network. And make sure you find the Manely Broncos podcast. Chime in on the comment section, and we'll get your comments on the air. Facebook as well. You guys can either go to the Manely Broncos podcast Facebook page or the MHRT network Facebook page. So, so thank you guys again for hopping along alongside with us.
Hopping in,
hopping
with us. Yeah.
So let's dive into. We'll save our coup de grace for the end, because I feel like we need to save that for the end, Brandon.
I will say, just at this point though, I'm still riding the high of the Nuggets. It still doesn't feel real. It still does not feel real. And Cam and I literally stood next to the trophy.
Yeah. Literally
8 hours ago, 10 hours ago. And it still doesn't feel real to me. So I'm riding that high. But I need football. I need football bad. I'm down bad. I'm like that live that Instagram live of Bruce Brown the day after their celebration, where he's like, "I'm down bad. This is Jokic's fault." You know what? Yeah, it is Jokic's fault, because he got me riding high, and I was super into it, and I loved it, and I was losing my mind for the entirety of the playoffs, and then now it's just I've come down, and I need sports. I need football. I need violence. I don't know, like this is probably not something that I should have been out loud. I should probably go to therapy for this, but I miss the violence of people getting
The violence.
I don't know. I'm weird, but I need football back. So I can't get here soon enough.
Ty asks you,
who is
Brendan,
my team? I mean, technically it's the Rockies, but like,
are they even a baseball team anymore?
I think that says it all.
Yeah.
I love going to Rockies games. The only saving grace of the Rockies, and this has been the case for a very, very long time, unfortunately, is just that their field is so incredible. Coors Field is just amazing. It's an amazing location. The nice thing about them being absolute garbage is it's cheap to go. Like it's super cheap to go to a game and just kind of have that experience. But you're not going to watch baseball. Like,
do you remember back when
that you every time you go to baseball, like in person, but especially with the Rockies, like you're just expecting that you're going to get your ass handed to you. Like that's just going to happen. But you can go pay less money to just kind of sit there in an amazing environment, drink some good beer. But yeah, it's the Rockies.
Anybody that's in the comment section, you know, I gotta like. Do you remember back when the Rockies games were like really cheap, especially like Rock Pile? This was like before the rooftop. Like this was like it was almost like $1 or $2 like for Rock Pile tickets. Like I mean, it is, and to think that like rooftop.
Oh, that was before my time.
Yeah, and so like rooftop tickets. You know, I don't know if they are necessarily like maybe the Rock Pile cheap, but I mean, I remember them being rather affordable. And not to mention too, like if you're going to Rockies games, you get the vibe of like people that are like wanting to socialize versus, you know, taking a Rockies game. And so thus there's that voucher that you could spend, right? You know, with the rooftops. Hey, we are like literally like still on a high. Brandon said it best about the NBA Finals and the fact that the Nuggets won the NBA Finals. So get it a chance.
Bro, it's not that we just went and saw the trophy. Like they brought all 3 Broncos trophies to my work a few months ago, which was cool. But we literally got to do it standing in Ball Arena on like the Nuggets
on
logo.
The actual court.
That's just never going to happen again. Yeah. Like it's not even just as simple as, because I know you're like, oh, well, I didn't even go see the Broncos. First of all, you had an opportunity to just walk into the Broncos facility and see their trophy after they won the Super Bowl, because I don't believe you. I'm calling bullshit on that. The only reason we got to go is because Cam works for Kroenke, and it was just a great opportunity. Like it was something I'm probably not going to be able to ever do again. And I know you're just giving me shit, but you know what? I will fight this because it was super cool, and you're just jealous.
You know, like the part of me was like, I was so sad that it ended so quickly. Like it was like
it was
and
so
out.
Streamlined. It was like
it was like in and out.
Get the fuck out, basically.
Yeah, but I had to laugh, and I think I actually told you this like when we left. Like it was like they have clearly, you know, we talk about us, Brandon, and people in the chat. Like we talk about us, like you know that we're probably still, you know, reminiscing and you know really taking in the fact that Nuggets.
It doesn't.
But the fact that the Nuggets won the championship, you literally walk into Ball Arena and on that basketball court, they haven't taken any of the final stuff off.
No,
yet.
That's where they won it. It was so surreal.
Yeah. So like they haven't taken any of like the finals padding off, like off the basketball hoops. They haven't taken what is it? You know, the home of the NBA finals, like on the outside of Ball Arena. Like they have very clearly and methodically really kind of soaked in the fact that they won the NBA Finals, and they're kind of letting it breathe, if you will, to use a radio / media term.
It was also interesting. Like I know that we're going way off topic at this point, but I've been in Ball Arena multiple times. I've been to games, but it feels different to me for some reason. Like maybe just because I was like so far up in the seats, but I didn't realize how. And this is also probably because like obviously they didn't have the normal setup that they would have when like people were playing. They didn't have like the visiting bench. They didn't have the home bench. But I didn't realize how almost out of place the court seems. Like, I don't know any other way to describe it. You're like in this huge ass, you're in the rink basically that is like being converted. Again, I know like just this the time of when I was there, but you're basically in the rink as it's being converted back to a rink for hockey. And the basketball court is kind of just like, it just feels and looks like it's just glued into the center of this big ice rink that has no ice. And there's just like a bunch of concrete around it. It's really weird. Or
The
it kind of
fact,
almost feels like you're on, the best way I can describe it is like, you feel like you're on, it's like a movie set. Like it's not a real basketball court. It's like a little setup of something that looks like a basketball court inside a much bigger area that's like the staging ground. It's weird.
what, and despite the fact that there's like 20,000 fans, give or take, the fact that you literally feel like you are the center of attention, because the fact that like it's a bowl, right? But the fact that like you feel like you're the center of attention because of the way that the entire arena is built, it was pretty surreal still.
Well,
So
there was no one else there except for the people that,
right,
the rest of the Cronky.
but still, but you can get that vibe when you're looking at it. All right, so let's switch gears and let's switch gears a little bit to the Denver Broncos. Thank you guys, for having us kind of have our little bit of a moment there talking about the meeting with the trophy. But let's talk about the Denver Broncos. So this was the first time that you had Vance Joseph, Joe Lombardi, even Zach Strief, and I think even Christian Parker even kind of met with the media the last handful of days. And if you are really looking at it from the vibe of the, just the old Vance Joseph perspective we talked about on 5280, but it's like, it's pretty clear. And Brandon, I don't know if you've had the opportunity to watch the Arizona Hard Knocks series, with
not all of it. I've seen
but
pieces.
Right, but it was pretty evident when you're watching that series that Vance Joseph had truly like no ill will, like no ill will to the Denver Broncos. And if you are
he even said this, I might have brought that. I don't remember if I brought this up last episode, but he even said like in his, I think it was his first press conference that he'd done since he came over. He was like, basically someone asked him like what it was like to be back, and he was like, yeah, I didn't win here. It's as simple as that. Like, yeah, they let me go and it sucked, but it's because I didn't win. Like he's a realist. Like he understands that, because that's the truth. I mean, he didn't win. He's not like, oh, well, yeah, I'm going to prove them wrong and they never should let me go.
Right.
Or whatever, like that drama that happens, unfortunately, in the NBA. Like you would see stuff like that happen. Not as much with the coaches, but like with the players. And I know that still happens with like football players, but Vance, obviously as a former football player, was just very down to earth. Like, yeah, I didn't win. That's on me. I'm excited to be back. Like I'm excited to see what he does.
Robert, just FYI, you are not the only person here. We have some YouTube people commenting, and obviously me and Brandon, of course, are here. So we got you covered, of course. So you are not the only person here. What's up, buddy? Thank you so much for tuning into the Manely Broncos podcast. Big E, welcome back, buddy. How you doing? So it's definitely interesting, in that case, because I think that when you look at it, too, like he also even dove into the fact that he still has a home here. Like he very
Everyone
clearly
sells a home here. Everyone that ever comes here and has a home here, they don't sell their home.
Yeah,
they never sell their home, which tells you all you need to know
about Colorado. And so anybody that tells
also
you
makes me cry about the housing market here, but that's a totally different.
It's definitely a totally different thing. But
just ignore me there.
What I thought was really interesting was if you go back and you listen to, say, Zach Strief's recent comments, in terms of the offensive line, it seemed like he was talking about the smarts, the mental part of Cushenberry's game. But what's interesting was that's kind of like all he would talk about with Cushenberry, Brandon.
Cushenberry is
so
his life here, man. I don't think they see him as. I mean, obviously they're going into the season as like there's a competition, but
what I thought it was just interesting.
Coach might not have
the moment he brought up Cushenberry, though, was in a very typical coach fashion. He started talking about the others in the room, which to
Oh,
be honest, that's not exactly a ringing endorsement.
oh no, absolutely not.
Endorsement for Cushenberry at all.
No, and this is something I actually kind of wanted to bring up today, but I wasn't anticipating it would be this quick, and also wasn't really planning on it being the center position just in general. But what do you think about, like, okay, if we're looking at, obviously we have camp coming up, or more camp coming up. What's like, I guess, are there specific players are going to be like trying to see what happens with them? Or maybe a good way to look at this too is like, are there certain positions that are kind of up in the air? Like, and what I mean by that is obviously, and center is like a perfect example of this,
Right.
is that there's maybe not an established starter, or maybe there even is an established starter, but there's real potential for there to be some kind of a mix up there. Like someone else can win.
Like you're saying, a position group that maybe you still have question marks on, or that maybe there are still some question marks.
Or I mean, maybe, but it also could be like, what's a position group that maybe there's some guys in that room that you're like, hey, these guys have some talent here, and I wouldn't be surprised if one of them just wins outright over the other ones. Maybe, which I guess could be like, I mean, the same thing as maybe there's still some question marks there, but I mean, again, center maybe isn't the best example there, because with center, like it's been the expectation that like that's going to be a camp battle. That's going to be a battle. Like we don't know for sure. Like Cushenberry is definitely not the incumbent starter. By no means like guaranteed the incumbent starter. He's definitely going to be fighting for that job, and there could be real turnover there. Maybe that's not the best kind of position that we're looking at here. And maybe there isn't a great specific position I could think of off the top of my head to kind of explain exactly what I'm talking about. But maybe something like, at linebacker, right? You kind of see Alex Singleton as that starter right across from Josie Jewell. Mm-hmm. Is it possible that Jonas Griffith could overtake Alex Singleton? I mean, we've seen Jonas Griffith do some pretty awesome stuff in his times when he was able to start
a hot take given the contract that they put out.
I know. I mean, and Alex Singleton is like a tackling machine, but I mean, Jonas Griffith, I think, is better in coverage, at least a little bit. So something like that, where maybe it's, and it might even be a hot take, but just something like that, where there's the potential in that room where a player could maybe overtake another player. Well, because like also Alex Singleton, it's a new regime. I mean, every time you have a new coach come in, it's an opportunity for, not that they're going to blow things up, but nothing is safe because that coach didn't put those players, that coach didn't insert those players as his guys that he picked as the starters. That's just what he inherited.
What do you guys feel? Go ahead and chime in the comments. And again, Robert, thank you so much for tuning in, as well as Biggie Bronco. Portland, Oregon is where you're is where you're from. So, and checking in from. So, I was the one position group that I was going to say, though, I don't necessarily think that he's going to be surpassing Greg Dulcich.
Oh, this definitely happens, Biggie.
But I really think, though, that it just depends on how he hits his stride. But there's no doubt in my mind that this is a big year for Alberto Cuevano. And obviously Sean Payton talked about that, basically saying that this is time. Like, this is go time for a guy like Alberto Cuevano. And obviously it is. But like, there's enough talent to work with Cuevano that I think that when you marry a lot of that skill set with Greg Dulcich, you have the capacity for a dual threat tight end room of some athletic freaks, right? Because I mean, like, Greg Dulcich doesn't necessarily have to be the guy that you can move out wide. It can also be Alberto, right? So like, it could be it could be Dulcich. There's a lot of ways that you can certainly work within that room. And then of course you have.
I wouldn't even be surprised if you see something where like Greg Dulcich is in there, maybe he is out wide, and you still have someone like Chris Manhertz in as a blocking tight end.
Right.
That would be interesting to see.
And I think that's one of the maybe big focal points as far as why maybe Dulcich and Judy, if you will, but like 1A, 1B in terms of like why they are maybe the biggest recipients of that Sean Payton being in that offense. Because the fact that they brought in so many tight ends, if you will, just affords that that opportunity to really mix and match and use these types of players like maybe an Alberto and of course a Greg Dulcich in these types of games, and especially have Russ, who, over the course of his career, barring, what happened last year, use those tight ends on a regular basis. So,
go ahead.
No, so the tight end position is certainly one, that kind of caught my eye a little bit, obviously, but
tight end is interesting for sure. I think one of the I think a good example of kind of what I'm trying to get at here, for me, and this is like also might be a little bit of a hot take, but maybe like the right cornerback position, because obviously Damari Mathis is kind of like you expect him to be your guy there. He had a great season last year. I expect him to be even better this year when he's obviously had like a year under him. I'm not saying I don't like or trust Damari Mathis. Like I think he can definitely do great things. But someone in that same room, like, I mean, he's way further down the depth chart at this point, according to at least the current information I have. But like Jaquan McMillan,
he did have that good one game, but
like I know, but like what a way to end the season though. Jaquan McMillan against the Chargers, dude was everywhere. Like that was like in a way that like you'll talk about, a lot of times when cornerbacks are really good, they're boring. Like people say that about Pat Surtain, as he was boring to watch because nothing ever happened. But Jaquan McMillan was exciting, but in a good way, in the sense that like they were still trying to go after him and he was still just making things happen. Like he was all over the field against the Chargers in week 18. I'm not saying I think he's going to like come in and be the starter. Like that's probably not going to happen, but I think that's a good position where like there maybe could be a little bit of that intrigue of it's probably going to be Damari Mathis. I mean, I like Damari Mathis. I think he's going to have a good year, but you do have some, it's not like guaranteed, and you have some guys there that maybe can kind of show out and maybe even at least move themselves up the depth chart a little bit. And I think like Jaquan McMillan is a great example of someone like that.
I have another position group that I think would be interesting. Now, granted, it's also a position group that I think, and this is not a Dalvin Cook discussion, but I think that it's the running back room. And the only reason why I say that is because, so if they don't really add anybody to that room, I guess maybe it's beating a dead horse here. Sorry, PETA. Anyway, but I think that if, but yeah, so like if you look at the running back room, how healthy is Javonte Williams, right? Like how healthy is Javonte Williams? Because if Samaje Perine is the hot hand, right? If Samaje Perine is the hot hand, then you could be able to roll with him for a certain number of weeks and still lessen the load a little bit for Javonte Williams and, kind of ease his workload a little bit so that he can be able to get comfortable, and get back to where he needs to be, even without Dalvin Cook.
I think that's the plan. I think that's definitely the
plan. Right. But I think that to use your point, though, I wouldn't be surprised if, say, Javonte is certainly the better back, but in this lone season, Javonte kind of takes a little bit of a step back, and he's a number 2 just for this season alone, just for the simple fact of getting back and getting healthy again. And you see Perine take a little bit more of a step.
Yeah. I mean, I'll put it this way. I'm not drafting Javonte Williams in fantasy, even though it hurts me because he's amazing and I love him. But I mean,
still probably good dynasty value, but yeah,
I don't know. I just don't know what it's going to be like. I mean, coming back from major injury, is he? I mean, he's obviously still not 100%.
The fact though, I will say,
he ever be? You don't know. One thing, just let me finish this train of thought.
Yeah.
One thing that could happen here is like, obviously especially with Sean Payton and definitely Russell Wilson, like really this entire team, but it's basically an expectation that they're expecting to go to the playoffs. Like if they don't go to the playoffs, heads are going to roll a little bit, if I'm being honest. Like I think if we don't make the playoffs, the only option I can see is like that somehow we still don't make it and Russell Wilson balls out of his mind and has like 30 touchdowns. Anything short of that, I think it's like playoffs or bust, and he's maybe out, if I'm being honest. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's definitely the goal and expectation for this season. And you could even look at this like Samaje is your regular season back. I'm not saying you only ride him in the regular season. You just thrust Javonte in there in the postseason. Like that's just a stupid idea because he's not
certainly fresh legs, but
he's not going to be in any kind of a rhythm. He's not going to be used to the speed of the game. He's not going to be making cuts and trusting his leg. And I know he doesn't like make a lot of cuts. That's just not his style. But he's not going to be trusting his leg. He's not going to be Javonte, basically. But maybe something like that where you start out Samaj JP run heavy. You ride him a little bit. Maybe Javonte Williams comes back and he's like, yeah, I mean, I feel a bit better. You kind of start getting there's a little bit more of a timeshare, but he never really takes over. It's still kind of 50-50. And then maybe you get into the postseason and it starts to become maybe more 60-40. Like I could see something like that happening.
Man, Biggie Bronco, thank you so much, man. It's a huge network, and we're adding a lot of really good podcasts to the network. So thank you so much. Yeah. I think the one thing that, the one thing that I think kind of pours cold water all of, over the running back conversation is the news that it's possible that Javonte may not be on the PUP list. The fact that is actually even a conversation.
Even if he's not on the PUP list, like they might still treat him like he's on the PUP list. You know what I mean?
But it's just the initial.
But I mean, just like that not happening. I mean, I get what you're saying. It's like shocking.
Right. Like it's almost like borderline. Yeah, it's almost like borderline Adrian Peterson recovery. And no one's Adrian Peterson. It's like what he did after that injury and to do what he did
was absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, like the guy was a machine. And so anytime you hear something like that in terms of like him not being on that, PUP list, is just you almost like raise your eyebrows a little bit and you're like, is that's actually possible? Yeah, maybe what we do is we kind of table that a little bit, because I think once you get closer to training camp, we can talk more on this podcast about like the training camp battles and stuff like that, position battles and stuff like that.
Let me just while we're talking about it, one last thing. I made it known what I feel about the Frank Clark move.
Mm-hmm.
Just one other thing I'm just really looking forward to seeing how this plays out in camp is just edge on this team in general, because it's not been good enough and the team knows that it's not been good enough, and Sean Payton is definitely going to say that it's not been good enough, at least from what he's watched. And Vance Joseph is going to say this has not been good enough. I mean, I know it's obviously not all the players' faults. I mean, there was injury. There was a lot of injury. But we need to be able to get a lot more pressure on the quarterback. And that's kind of I'm not going to say it's not really a top heavy room, but it's a very interesting room in the sense that like you have obviously Frank Clark, DJ Jones, Zach Allen, Baron Browning, who is going to be starting the PUP list, Nick Bonito, who's kind of like hasn't really done much and he kind of needs to step up a little bit. You got Drew Sanders, who I know he kind of might play like inside linebacker, but he has the skill set to rush the passer a lot. You got Jonathan Cooper, who could maybe come in and do some snaps. And like, obviously you got Randy Gregory. Like that's a known quantity, but Randy Gregory, I mean, isn't really a known quantity because he hasn't played, which was really the concern when we got him. And I'm nothing against Randy Gregory. I mean, when he started out the season, like he started out hot,
but there's the thing is like, it's never in a on field thing with Gregory. It's about being, I should take it back. Like it's never the play on the field. It's about actually getting on the field.
It's about, does he play on the field? Which has not been happening, unfortunately. So that whole room, I'm interested to see what happens. and we need some more depth that has proven that they can step in and do some stuff, because we can't unfortunately put all our eggs in the Randy Gregory basket. Frank Clark, don't know what that's going to look like. And Matt
I will say though,
who knows?
I will say though, to talk about the pass rush just for a second, I do find some similarities, and we've talked about it before on the podcast. And that is just the fact that it's a boom or bust room, right? And I think that like there is a lot of salivating potential with that pass rush room, because like if you look at it from the Benito side of it, the Browning side of it, the Gregory side of it, just in terms of that trio, they are one of the top trio in terms of pass rush win rate. Not counting obviously snaps or anything like that, but like they're like tops in that department. And then of course, you got, Frank Clark and, of course, his kind of production that he can provide within the postseason. But I just think that like there's so much potential within that room that if you can be able to get the most out of them and they can be healthy and they can, create that kind of pass rush, I think you are looking at a room that I think has that potential to be solid. But because of the doubts that have been crept in, there are reasonable doubt. I mean, like there's reasonable doubt, and that's because of injuries. And because when there's those injuries, it's the productivity that's not happening on the field because you're not seeing them on the field. And so I think that therein lies the boom or bust potential of the pass rush room, which of course goes hand in hand with the wide receiver room. Ray,
even Bradley Chubb when he was around. I mean, again, I love Bradley Chubb, but he didn't show up sometimes, to be honest with you.
Yeah. What's up, Ray? How you doing? Avatar, what's up, man? Go Nuggets. Yeah, so let's
we'll table the training camp talk for now, but there's something I wanted to bring up because I'm interested to see what happens, and that position group specifically is in some dire need of we gotta get some more there, and it has the potential to, for sure.
I was gonna say, continuing some of the Bronco conversation, and I know that what was it? I think it was Robert asked, and this is just in line with Russell Wilson. Like, what do we expect of Russ? There's no doubt that Russ is going to be helpful. We've had that conversation a lot on this particular podcast, but I want to further this more with the conversation piece that we had just before we were going to hit record. And it happens to be within the 49ers camp. In 49ers camp, Adam Schefter believes that Sam Darnold can be the guy and actually be the guy that's actually going. That's exactly my reaction to the Sam Darnold news in San Francisco. Tongue out and everything. Yeah, maybe not the tongue out, but the actual like shocked face. No, anyway. But the fact that you actually have the possibility of a player, a quarterback, who they drafted really high. They traded up to that particular slot.
They traded up.
Yeah, they traded up to take Trey Lance.
You're still not saying it right. They traded up. Yeah. They didn't just trade up. They gave up
the farm.
Yeah. They gave up their firstborn.
Yeah.
I saw someone, I don't remember who this was, but like props to them because it was funny. Someone on Twitter posted, "You can't convince me that the 49ers weren't cyberbullied into taking Trey Lance over Mac Jones." You almost
wonder, because like if you go back and you kind of like circle back the timeline of how that whole thing went down for just one team, it was truly like it was truly like the, pun intended, because Sam Darnold's there, but it was like the Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield lineup of the way things were shaking out in the NFL draft, because you had, you had Sam Darnold as like the main conversation of being number one. And then once the spring, the Senior Bowl hit, right? The Senior Bowl hit. Baker Mayfield ended up being the talk of the town, and then obviously going number one to the Cleveland Browns. But and then funny enough, Sam Darnold goes to the Jets, and then now he's with the San Francisco 49ers. But it's crazy, you know, in the terms of Mac Jones and Trey Lance, because like Mac Jones was the talk of the town in San Francisco and probably on peers and everywhere in San Francisco. And the fact that it turned out to be Trey Lance that ended up being the guy, I think is just, it's kind of crazy. So anyway, to Robert's question in the sense about like Russ improving, let's take a step further and we'll just say it's pretty clear that Trey Lance is 1 foot in, 1 foot out the door, and maybe even both feet out the door, maybe for him personally. And it's just a matter of his agent working something so that he can get out of San Francisco. But if you're the Denver Broncos, and in fact, George Paton, who it certainly seems like the Denver Broncos were rumored to be enamored.
Well, there was all that talk by Albright on the draft of like, you know, depending on who's there, they might go after someone. And then pretty much right after the draft, he was like, yeah, the quarterback that they wanted, that they would have made a move for, went at 7.
You know where I'm going with it.
Which is Trey Lance.
Yeah, so you obviously know where I'm going with this, but given the situation of Russell Wilson, and I know they signed Jarrett Stidham to the borderline backup starter money. If you are the Denver Broncos and you have that opportunity to take that kind of chance and trade for Trey Lance, do you at least entertain that idea?
It depends on what the trade offer is, because what do we have to trade?
Because like
take Russ for Lance straight up.
Because like the conversation piece with that is like you're having a player, a young quarterback, who's at least cost controlled, but also it may seem like he needs a change of scenery. So the 49ers may want something in return. It obviously is not going to be a 7th round draft pick, but they are at least wanting something in return. So I don't know. I think it is a fun.
I don't think the trade value on him can get any lower.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. And then of course there's the conversation of, do you trust Trey Lance? This is a conversation probably for more about like next year, or even a conversation about next year. But like, do you trust Trey Lance in that room, or do you trust the idea of drafting a Drake May, you know, or lucking yourself into the Caleb Williams conversation, or do you take a Shedeur Sanders? Like it's just that kind of like conversation of like
here's the thing that just blows my mind about Trey Lance, that just gives me pause. Trey Lance is being coached by Kyle Shanahan. If Kyle Shanahan can't make Trey Lance into what Trey Lance is supposed to be, I don't know who can. Like Kyle Shanahan is at this point one of the greatest offensive coaches in the league. That's like his reputation. And maybe we're overvaluing Kyle Shanahan. I can't believe I said that out loud on a podcast. But I mean, I don't know that. What else can you think of? Because like if either Kyle Shanahan is not the coach that we think he is, or Trey Lance is not the quarterback that we think he is, one of those two things is true.
Yeah.
Or just like maybe it just happens to be a case of like they just don't mesh at all, which is, I'm not sure that's a legitimate reason. Like what else could there, like why is Trey Lance so bad? Like or not even bad, but why do we not see him? Is he struggling? Is he not taking coaching well? Is he not understanding the offense? Is he turning the ball over all the time? Are his mechanics horrible? Does Kyle just not like him? I don't know. I mean, you would imagine with what they gave up to go get him that they would have gone in with every opportunity. Like they would probably give him every chance to take that starting role. Like they wanted him to be the starting quarterback.
Yeah.
Why else would they trade so much? And clearly he has not won that, and he has not been good enough to be that. And if he's not going to be good enough with what Kyle Shanahan does, and I mean, maybe with Sean Payton is also in the conversation of best offensive coaches in the league. So maybe just the Kyle Shanahan method doesn't work for Trey. Maybe the Sean Payton method might work better. I don't know. I mean, that just gives me pause, and that would make me greatly limit what I would be willing to give them for trade bands.
And like I think that when
Blows
you
my
look,
mind. I don't get it.
what would be it'd be so funny. Like, it would be hilarious. Just a little bit. But like, what would be crazy is watch him go to Miami. And
with the
replace
Kyle Shanahan disciple. Yeah.
with the Kyle Shanahan disciple, and the fact that who knows what's going to happen with Tua Tagovailoa. He goes there and he flourishes. With
Do you
Mike
think Tua
McDaniel.
will retire?
Maybe. I
Legitimate
think that,
question.
I actually
should consider it, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I mean, with the fact that you had him on the ground like that, I think is something in terms of it was scary. I mean, aside from, say, the scariness that happened with the DeMar Hamlin stuff, because that's in a category and an upper echelon of like scary. But because that was almost like death on a field almost. And I think that like right behind that, it was Tua Tagovailoa's, because like when Tua was down on the turf like that was like, what was going on? And then you had I hate to say, certainly how a team handled the whole situation, the whole concussion protocol, but it's like you just were really questioning this just how Miami was handling this concussion protocol with Tua, right? Because it was like he would go in and the concussion protocol would be like, he's cleared concussion protocol. Right, exactly. And when he plays the next week, you can clearly tell he's still feeling the after effects of that concussion. And so it was one of those things, like, you truly are starting to wonder if it's in his best interest to truly contemplate retirement. Like, really.
Like, I don't mean to make light of this or make a joke about it, but I'm legitimately wondering, like, what that concussion protocol test looked like. Because all I'm thinking is, like, you ever seen Just Friends?
Mm-hmm.
When Anna Faris falls in the mall, and then Ryan Reynolds walks into the room, and she has like the ice on her head, and she's eating toothpaste, and he walks in, and she's like, "I'm a bubble." I'm just imagining, like, Tua, how you feeling? All right, you're good. Get out there. Like, I mean, I don't want to make light of this, but what did he possibly do that made you think he was good to go back in the game?
Yeah.
Ty, I love that movie so much. It's so good. But like, for real, like, she's fine. She's got her toothpaste. Anyway, it blows my mind. Like, the NFL can't ever claim to care about player safety anymore, ever. Like, they've already not been able to, but they have lost that privilege.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. You ready for our Mount Rushmore conversation?
No, but go ahead.
All right. So, people in the chat, feel free to chime in. I feel like we actually might have.
Do they have to be different? Like, do I have to include every sports team?
Well, so that's in terms of the current Denver sports players. It may not actually. It may not actually be,
because it's
different. Different teams. Like, I would imagine as of like right now, there's not exactly a Rockies player that's on
that's exactly why I asked.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I think that, I think it's a fun conversation. So anyway, in terms of the Mount Rushmore conversation, let's start with the easiest one, the all-time Denver sports Mount Rushmore. Let's start with that.
We're doing all time, not current.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that seems to be pretty easy. Now, the only gray area, Ty, he says the Rockies player could be the fans. I mean, it's fair because, like, if you look at the Rockies' attendance, the average attendance, I think, for Rockies fans puts them within the top 12, top 13 in Major League Baseball, which is
So we're gonna say that the Rockies part is Coors Field.
okay. That's fair.
I'm just kidding.
God,
that's
but
sad. Come on, Rockies, why can't you be good? Or even not shit.
So anyway, Denver Broncos player John Elway, Rockies player Todd Helton,
or Larry Walker. I know we had this conversation. I would probably go Todd Helton, but
right. It's a fair conversation, and maybe if we have some Colorado Rockies fans that are actually in the chat right now, maybe that's a conversation. Is it Todd Helton or is it Larry Walker? Because Larry Walker is the first Colorado Rocky to be in the Hall of Fame. Like, he took on the Rockies hat to be in the Hall of Fame. So is it Todd Helton or is it Larry Walker? I still say it's Todd Helton.
I'm still going with Helton.
Yeah,
it's a legitimate argument, which is hilarious that's like the Rockies have fallen far, man. I would give legitimate thought to putting Nolan Arenado on this list if he was still a Rocky. But we paid $150 million to get him to another team.
Yeah. So
I will never ever forgive that.
Yeah, so I think that from a Denver sports product, like the fact, okay, well, first off, I know that Todd Frazier has been coined the Todd Father, but oh, by the way, Todd Helton is the first Todd Father. I mean, sure, you guys can, Reds fans can, name Todd Frazier the Todd Father, but the actual Todd Father and the first time it was ever been coined Todd Father was to Todd Helton and of course when he was with the Colorado Rockies. So to me, Todd Helton is the Rockies, Mount Rushmore player. Now the Avalanche, this one actually might be interesting. Be interesting. I still say Sakic.
I still say Sakic.
But like, there's still some sentimental value for like guys like Peter Forsberg, right? So I mean like
Forsberg, yeah, but it's still Sakic. And I love Forsberg, but that's just it's Sakic.
Okay, this is a slight little bunny trail. Who was a better GM, Joe Sakic or John Elway? Two Super Bowls, and one as a GM.
I'd have to go back and
two Stanley Cups. Dang, Biggie Bronco.
That's hard. That's hard.
Biggie Bronco with some fire. He says if there are Mount Rushmore Denver players, it'll be all Broncos. Everybody else just don't matter.
I mean,
wow.
I was going to make a legitimate argument that when we got to current players, that they would all be Denver Nuggets.
You can even make it with the Avalanche too.
I mean, I know. That's why I wasn't going to go that route. But anyway, that's actually.
Okay.
I don't know.
We'll let you think about that. I'll let you think about that.
I won't have an answer.
Yeah. So Sakic, Elway, Helton.
I would maybe go Sakic just a little bit, mostly because of the Paxton Lynch conundrum.
Yeah. And of course, the last 4 years. It's not just Paxton, but it was also like the last 4 years, with Elway and stuff like that. So, and then Jokic, right? I mean, it's gotta be Jokic, right?
You have to put who else could it be?
Alex English?
That's almost disrespectful to Jokic at this point, which, like, imagine that statement. That's an insane statement for me to even say. And it's still true. Jokic just had probably the best NBA postseason of all time, even though no one wants to admit it because everyone hates him.
So I'm curious, Avatar chimes in and he actually says Walker. He says Larry Walker. So
you can go with Walker.
So I'm curious for Avatar, why do you say Larry Walker versus Todd Helton? Because interesting, he goes with Peyton Manning. Remember when I told you, like, after we left Ball Arena, I told you, like,
we had this exact conversation.
Like I felt like there's it depends on like if you're going off of opinion and versus like objectivity. Because if you're like objectively thinking, and you said it best, like longevity, you're probably going to go with Elway.
He won
But if
two.
you're right, but if you're
He was
also
here for
going to,
years.
but if you're going to talk, say like maybe opinion, I might actually put Manning.
I mean, if you're talking opinion, I'm probably gonna go with Manning because I witnessed it and I love
Yo,
Peyton Manning,
You also share a birthday,
and we have the same birthday. So
yeah. So yeah,
I mean, I can't disagree with that list.
no, but it's crazy to think that Jokic,
He's 28 years old.
With what
he's my
done,
age. That's wild.
Yeah,
but it has to be him. It literally can't be anyone else. I mean, Alex English, yeah. But again, listen to this statement. Like, this statement just blows my mind. At this point, putting Alex English on this list instead of Jokic is disrespectful to Jokic. And it's nothing against Alex English. I love Alex English. Yeah. He's great. You can have a legitimate conversation about him maybe being on here. But that's how good Jokic is that if you put Alex English on here above Jokic right now, especially after what just happened, recency bias is a thing. But even without that, I would say it's probably disrespectful to Jokic.
I mean,
that's insane.
I mean, think about it. Like if you're talking from like a Nuggets perspective, who would be your top three choices? Jokic, English, and David Thompson, right? I mean, so
yeah,
or maybe Fat Lieber.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on. I mean, I feel like there's kind of a lot of directions you can decide to go. Like, do you want to look at Melo?
Right.
That's the only like reason I'm maybe. I mean, probably David Thompson. Like, it's probably David Thompson. Jokic, Alex English, David Thompson. Those are the top three. But I mean, again, it depends on if you forget Melo can be in this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, I wouldn't put him up there just because, like, I just wouldn't put him above probably any of those other players. But yeah, it's probably those three. But I mean, it's still Jokic, in my opinion. So
Avatar,
like, just I don't know how you can't put him. How do you not put him? So
Avatar chimes in terms of Larry Walker, and this is exactly what we just talked about with Larry Walker, right? So maybe rolling with Larry Walker just for the simple fact he's in the Hall of Fame now as a Rocky. But if Todd Helton goes in and, you know, cross our fingers and prayers that he does get in, then it's definitely going to change. That, you know, yeah.
I mean, there's no shortage of Denver players that should be in Hall of Fames.
You know what is crazy? And granted, Joe Sakic is the current general manager, but like, it is actually crazy to think that the Avs, in terms of Mount Rushmore players, may see a turning of the guard and changing of the guard with players like Nathan McKinnon or even a Cale Makar. A Joe Sakic potentially. So now let's do the transition a little bit because
I mean, maybe, but
so let's do
let me just drop this in here. Put Randy Gradishar in the fucking Hall of Fame. Anyway,
Josh says, by the way,
that's a bold take.
For arguable, Patrick Waugh. I actually think he's the greatest goalie of all time, not necessarily the honorable mention.
I mean, that's a legitimate answer that you could say, but I still have to go with Joe Sakic. Again, it's almost kind of like the same thing as a Jokic thing of like, okay, how do you not put Joe Sakic?
Mm-hmm. Or Peter
But there are some absolutely worthy players. Like, probably the first people your mind goes to, Joe Sakic, Peter Forsberg, but even behind that, I mean, Patrick Roy,
Claude Lemieux
is right there. What's that?
Claude Lemieux. Just kidding.
Yep. He's right there.
Yeah.
We've had some good Avalanche players, man.
Yeah. When you actually think about it, they've really been fortunate Like, yeah, the fact that we've been having like that kind of talent with the Avs.
Kroenke just every team owned by Kroenke.
Well, at that point in time, Kroenke didn't exactly.
I know,
Yeah.
but
So now let's do a little quick transition to the current, the current Mount Rushmore, because now this is going to get interesting because there is talent across the board on like 3 teams.
So this is where it's hard because.
So now people that are commenting, so real quick,
you almost have to look at it. Go ahead.
I was going to say, so real quick, people that are commenting in the chat, this is now current Denver sports Mount Rushmore players. So like if you're going to formulate a Mount Rushmore of current Denver sports players. So go ahead and chime in the chat now. Go ahead, Brandon.
You almost have to look at it as like are you trying to make sure you're including one player from every sport and it's only one player from every sport? Because if you don't do that, I can make an argument that, and again, I mean, recency bias, but I can make an argument that currently they're all Nuggets players, or you can make an argument that they're all Avalanche players.
You can even make an argument it is actually a Bronco player.
I mean, you could definitely. That's kind of why I was like, well, if we go at this like the way it is, and we're trying to include one person for every sport, it's a little bit easier.
But the thing is,
it's also so hard if you're looking at it from just like, if you're not trying to say, hey, who's the best person from every sport, and you're just trying to say the best player, that's where it gets difficult because you're literally comparing apples to oranges. I mean, they're completely different sports.
Yeah. Well, and I think what really just unfortunately damages this is that
even if problem to have.
Even if we actually look at it. Oh, and by the way, this is also proving that Denver is a sports town, and also
anyone who says that it isn't a sports town is just stupid.
Whenever we have this conversation, but
this is a good question from Josh. I think we all know why he asks this.
I would probably have to say current,
just on the team currently.
Like on the team currently, because like the thing is like, and what really pours water on the Rockies is like if we're having this conversation about having it from every single team, you cannot pick a player that's on the current Rockies team and say that he's a Mount Rushmore player, and so
like you can't. There's literally no one.
Yeah, there's literally no one, and you can talk. You can talk yourself into Charlie Blackmon, but Blackman's been way too injured. No.
The other reason that this is an interesting question is like, he's technically still a current player, just not on the team. Von Miller.
It's true. So interesting. Bobby actually went with more of the standard of if you were to pick one from every single team, and he says Jokic, McKinnon, Simmons, and Blackmon. And I think that the only twist that I would probably make is instead of Simmons, I'd probably roll with Surtain. If you were to, yeah. And even
no disrespect to Simmons, just Surtain is a monster.
But yeah,
it's still a good list.
So, oh gosh. It's just so hard because, like, if you're also talking about Rushmore, you're talking 4 players, which means 1 or 2 other great players are being left off this list.
Let's do this because this will make it interesting. Let's go with there's still 4.
Mm-hmm.
You still have to pick 1 from per team, but let's just omit the Rockies because we both know that there is no one on the Rockies. Yeah. So you can double up. You can take 2 players from the same team.
So the question is, though, who would you double
can
up?
Only do 4. That's the question. That's the fun part. That's the twist.
That's
the puzzle.
Now, at least in air quotes, the easy twist, is we know exactly which 2 teams to choose from. The question is just the actual question. The question is just who are those players. because let's take a kind of like an onion look at this. Like let's peel it layer by layer. So the great players for the Colorado Avalanche are Nathan McKinnon, Cale Makar,
Well, do we
Gabriel
want to start
Landeskog.
there? Go ahead.
Right? Gabriel Landeskog.
We'll start here.
Nathan McKinnon, Cale Makar. Then the Denver Nuggets, you have Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray. And
honestly, you could probably put Aaron Gordon in there.
And I think there's definitely probably an argument for Mr. Nugget.
Yeah.
And Bruce Brown, just because I just don't want him to leave. I'm kidding, but
fuck, this is hard. Okay, so let's just get the obvious ones out of the way. Broncos, Surtain.
Yeah, Broncos or Surtain for me. Jokic is definitely in there.
Jokic is duh. Yeah. And I think honestly, you could. This is where it's interesting. Who is your? So we've had the no duh Nuggets player. We've had the no duh Broncos player. Who is the no duh Avalanche player? Because I don't know if it's as simple.
Do you remember when we had this conversation about like if you were to rank McKinnon above Makar, and back when we were ranking some of like the players as far as like the best Denver sports players,
right?
Like it's that legit argument because it's like there is actually an argument that Makar may have more hardware when all is said and done than Nathan McKinnon. And the thing that with Makar versus McKinnon is the NHL is also a league where, as a veteran, when you're in the
we're doing Nathan Makar. Sorry, go ahead.
Nathan Makar. Is that like when you're a veteran in the NHL, like you're looking at probably like 26, right? Like 25, 26 years old. Like when you're like entering your prime, almost like in the NHL, it's almost like when you're hitting 20. Like as far as like, how good you are. And so for Makar, like there's actually a chance that he could have certainly a lot more hardware with Makar versus McKinnon. And McKinnon is a great player.
McKinnon's only 3 years older than Makar.
Well, but still, that's still a lot.
I know it's still a lot, but it's not like, we're talking about someone who's 28 and someone who's 22.
So I think for right now, I will probably put Makar over McKinnon.
Really?
That's not a disrespect to McKinnon.
No, I know it
for sure. Like now it gets interesting because then there's a Jamal Murray conversation.
So I'm gonna do something wild just because. Well, we'll get there. We'll get there.
So what do we already?
I would probably say.
So what do we already solidify?
I'd probably say Makar. Jokic, Makar, Surtain.
Jokic, Makar, and Surtain. Those are our three. So now,
although I'm gonna throw a curveball in a minute.
So now, is it Nathan McKinnon or Jamal Murray or Gabriel Landeskog?
I'm gonna say, and this hurts me, and there is some obvious recency bias, but I'm gonna go with Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray just had. Jokic had the best postseason ever. Jamal Murray just had a historic postseason. It's just not as historic as Jokic. So we don't talk about it as much. Jamal Murray, I just had this in front of me. Let me go pull this back up. Players who have...
Is this the 50-point stat?
Yeah. Highest field goal percentage of 50-point game. Last 50 years. Jamal Murray, 84%. Michael Jordan, 82.8, which that's a gap. Kyrie Irving, 82.6. Giannis Antetokounmpo, 81. Jamal Murray's came in a game where he threw he shot no free throws against the Cavs. That's ridiculous. Jamal Murray's also, I think, one of 3 players to ever average. He's 30 points or 25 points, 10 assists in the finals. I don't remember exactly what the statistic is, but Jamal Murray had a historic postseason. Jamal Murray is having a extended breakout because of his injury.
Yeah.
And Jokic is just so good that he overshadows him a little bit.
And oh, by the way,
It's Batman and Robin. They literally combine their 2-man game is first of all the best 2-man game in the NBA right now.
Right now, yeah.
Like that's just not even close. It's also one of the best duos ever.
Yeah.
Already, which is ridiculous. Like it's probably you go look at. I don't remember where I saw this statistic. This is more of a Jokic stat, which is just kind of like actually insane. But it was like a list of I think it's like the most efficient 2-man games in the NBA or something, and at the very top it's Jokic and Murray, and then it's Jokic and Aaron Gordon, and then it's Jokic and MPJ, and then it's ridiculous. But I think all kinds of like things popping up during the finals of like this is how many points Jamal Murray and Jokic have scored together versus the entire other team.
Right. And so I think if you truly do kind of peel it down a little bit, maybe it is more of the not a Gabe Landeskog. It's more about the Nathan McKinnon versus Jamal Murray discussion. But the thing with Jamal, is that like this was also like the first time he's been healthy for a full postseason, and we got the opportunity to see what he can do and how needed and valued. Yeah. Well, right. Right. But like how truly valuable he is on that team. And so I think that it's just.
I think he's just going to get better next year, and that's fucking horrifying.
And the thing that's so crazy is people. The thing that's crazy is people talk all the time about how Jokic is entering his prime. Jamal Murray is also.
He's 26.
Yeah, is 26 years old, and
he just turned 26 fairly recently.
Yeah, like he's literally creeping up to those little, areas where he's only going to get better, which is a scary thought because
Paul Pierce says he's the best point guard in the NBA right now, which I don't know if I agree with that much of a take, but you can put him in the discussion.
Right, exactly. However, there's a legitimate conversation with him about being the best point guard when you think about the stats that he was able to put up in terms of having a very down point production game wise for him the last 4 games, if you will, for the NBA Finals. But the fact that he was able to, able to put unselfish
assisting like crazy.
Exactly, and the fact that he was still having a double, but the points were down, but the assist totals were big time up. And so when you have that kind of unselfishness,
he averaged more assists than Jokic.
Yeah, so it's a big deal.
And also, I keep going back to what he did for like 3 straight quarters in the Lakers series. He was Super Saiyan. Like I don't even know how else he just got. I mean, he literally came in, I think it was fourth quarter of game 2 or something. It was the fourth quarter, one of the earlier games. I think it was game 2. Maybe it was game 1. I don't remember. But he was kind of like in a little bit of a slump. And then he just turned it on. He just started he literally couldn't miss. He hit everything. He kind of like reminded me back when we were watching the Donovan Mitchell, Jamal Murray series in the playoff bubble, which was like still honestly, that's one of the best series. I want to see that again. That was like, I think I saw someone put this out there when that was going on, which like I could not agree with you more. And it was basically like, it was like, hey, this is my tier list of when this player is on, nothing short of a meteor hitting the earth can make me turn off the TV. And he was on that list. But what he did in that Lakers series was he literally he won the whole series for us. Like he is the reason we sweep them.
I think one of my favorite plays from Jamal Murray, and it may have been my favorite play of the entire postseason run. And this is, if you didn't have the chance to choose like the Jokic 3-pointer over Anthony Davis or the Jokic 3-pointer over LeBron, which I'm still trying to fathom to this day how that got in. But it's the play where it looked like the Lakers were getting ready to get some momentum, and it was the alley-oop to Anthony Davis. I'm still calling
Anthony Davis.
To Anthony Davis. And then it no, LeBron and the Lakers did the alley-oop to Anthony Davis.
I was like, I thought you were saying Jamal gave the alley-oop to Anthony Davis. I'm like, bro,
no.
No. Okay, go ahead.
But like you basically had an alley-oop that was the first and maybe only time of that game where the crowd was really getting into it with the Lakers game. And then Jamal Murray, it may have been the game where he was actually like red hot that game. And then he comes right back and just shoots a three ball from the top. Yeah, he shoots the three ball from the top of the key. And it was like a shump, like it hit the back of the net and went right down. And it was like just the moment that happened, the entire Staples Center, I'm still calling it Staples, the entire Staples Center just got quiet because they knew exactly at that moment that the reaction and everything was way premature because they knew exactly the fact that the Denver Nuggets truly had come to play, and especially Jamal Murray, and that particular night was coming to play.
So that was a great play. I can't forget this one. I mean, this one wasn't like as much of a momentum turner, but we talk all the time about the Jokic shot over Anthony Davis. I think it was the same game. There was that, I don't even know how to describe it. There was a circus three by Jamal Murray where he's like backing down. I think it was also Anthony Davis. He's like backing down Anthony Davis at the top of the key, and he just like half turns and just like throws it up towards the basket and just like sinks it. And like he wasn't even facing the basket.
Didn't he even do it? Didn't he even do it on LeBron and AD?
I mean, maybe that first one I was thinking about was on LeBron. He then had another good one against the other person, but like that one specifically, I think it was actually LeBron. But it was just like ridiculous. I'm going to make a comparison, and it's going to be kind of spicy.
Okay.
But go back and watch this and tell me I'm wrong. You know who Jamal Murray reminds me of when he gets in the paint a little bit? Kobe.
Uh-oh.
Go back and watch Kobe's little like signature turnaround fadeaway jump shot. Jamal Murray does it all the time. Jamal Murray, that is his thing. His like little turnaround jumper fade. Mamba mentality is where that started.
Do you think that when he shot the 3-pointer over LeBron,
he said Kobe?
He said Kobe.
Maybe.
Mumbled it under.
I mean, I know that's like a take, but go back and watch Kobe do that, and then go and watch Jamal. They're the same player when you look at how, like the way that they make that shot. I mean, Kobe, I think, just does it at a higher clip, but
I gotta say,
so similar.
And it goes back to kind of circle back a little bit on Murray. It's one of the reasons why I think that people, even in the NBA circles, are really undervaluing at that point in time, like still like just how good Murray is. Because I think that, and you said
I say all this, and he's still overshadowed by Jokic a little bit.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous. It's insane.
Because I think that in this day and age, when you want to be able to have the kind of games and keep up with the teams like the Warriors and the elite shooting teams of the NBA, like you need that kind of guy like a Jamal Murray who can put up those big points week in and week out and game in and game out and put up 50 and put up, the kind of big game numbers that they can certainly afford every night. And so I think that for Murray, those are the kinds of numbers that I think really, can help separate him. And especially too, like we live in this day and age too right now with the NBA that like, I think the more points you score, and it's somewhat sad that this is where we're at, but like the more points you score in the NBA in a game also gets you a little bit more notoriety, in terms of, right, exactly. And
it's hands down Steph Curry's the reason to blame, which is
right. But also I think too, like if you look at Jamal Murray, he has
something in itself.
He has a poor man's Steph in his game because of the fact that he can, they always used to say this with Ray Allen, but like the moment he hit a bucket or even like a Reggie Miller, and granted those were like pure 3-point shooters, but it's like the moment that they hit a three or they saw that window and they knew what their window was, it was automatic every single shot. And that ball was going in and in and in and in. So
I mean, you definitely get those times when like when you get the Murray flurries, basically, where he just like it doesn't even matter what the shot is, it's going in. Like he could shoot it, it's a 29-footer and it's going in, and you just know.
Oh, to certainly be in the mind of Bones Highland and what he would be thinking
Bones is feeling it, man. Bones is in his feels right now.
We had to laugh because this isn't the first time that I actually saw it, but when you're at games, when you're at some Nuggets games or anything, I do wonder whenever you see someone wear a Bones Highland jersey what that particular fan is going through. And obviously what Bones Highland is going through. So yeah, it's gosh, what to certainly, oh man, just ponder of what could have been if you were Bones Highland.
Anyway, so just to bring it back for a minute, I'm going Jokic, Makar, Surtan, Murray.
Yeah, I would probably have to go with the same. Although, again, it's no disrespect to McKinnon. I mean, one of the more impressive plays that I kind of even go back to was the play that he had in the St. Louis Blues series where he took it coast to coast and scored on Bennington. And, that was one of the more impressive plays I think I'd seen in all of sports. It almost reminded me, I was talking to James Palmer about this, but it was just like, it almost reminded me of when Patrick Mahomes threw that touchdown pass to Tyreek Hill with like 10 seconds left. And I think it was the Buffalo Bills in that like really, really epic AFC championship or something like that. Like that's what it reminded me of. Like just a player that can just truly take over a game. And that's the thing with Jamal Murray too, is like he can obviously take over a game. But like Nathan McKinnon also can take over a game. And I think that the thing that really helped separate him was, and at least within that playoff run, was he really became a good defensive player in that series, or in that postseason run. So that was a nice little touch. But yeah, some honorable mentions. I will say some honorable mentions, probably for current players. Justin Simmons is definitely an honorable mention, because if you're not going to say Pat Surtain, you certainly have to roll Justin Simmons within that. Gabriel Landeskog, obviously a honorable mention. Aaron Gordon, which is crazy to think about considering how short of amount of time he's been in here, but he is certainly the kind of guy that you want to party with. Literally, I mean. And Mr. Nugget, like literally having a mini parade before the big parade.
Aaron Gordon is the perfect third man in so many ways.
If you can make an argument, I guess, on a certain Rocky, would probably have to be Charlie Blackmon. In terms of just an honorable mention, it would have to be Charlie Blackmon. I think at one point you probably could have done Javonte Williams. Maybe. I know Big E Bronco mentioned Javonte Williams. But yeah, so those are some, I think.
The fact that we didn't even utter the name Russell Wilson. Russ is down bad, man. Maybe he turns it around. God, if he just turns it around to the point where we have the same conversation in a year and we're talking about, Russell Wilson is on there, I'll be so happy. That's all I want in life.
Yeah. I don't know about that's all you want. Yeah.
Sports life.
But anything that's honorable mention for that, I think Bronco fans will definitely be happy. I want to actually, just real quick as we're winding this out, this is a fun conversation that I think Big E Bronco chimed in. Here's one. Maybe not necessarily like a player. Maybe not a player Mount Rushmore, but a coach Mount Rushmore. Still, though, I will say, I don't necessarily know if you could put a Rocky coach on that list. But I think if you did, and if you chose to put a Rocky on there, I would probably give the nod either to Clint Hurdle, or I would give the nod to Don Baylor, the late Don Baylor. I would probably give it to either one of those if we had to go with a Rockies coach. And I think it's crazy how obviously the Avs, I think maybe current wise, obviously it's going to end up being Jared Bednar. But I think from the Nuggets perspective, Brandon, it is actually kind of crazy to think that Michael Malone has actually entered that conversation of even supplanting George Karl. Because you and I had a conversation about how, where does the Nuggets team rank of what they had with the 2009 team, right? Versus say the team that obviously won the championship. So the fact that Malone supplanted Karl, who was the coach of that team, right? So that's actually kind of crazy to think that Malone is on that Mount Rushmore of coaches all time. And then the Broncos, I would
when everyone wanted to fire Michael Malone.
And Bednar.
Yeah. Broncos is interesting because off the top of your head, you kind of have to say Shanahan.
Right.
But I mean, there's some Gary Kubiak.
For one season though. For the few seasons that he was there, for sure. I think it's Mike Shanahan personally, but yeah.
I mean, I know it's probably Mike Shanahan, but like Dan Reeves. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, if you're gonna go between two, it's probably Dan Reeves and Mike Shanahan. It's still Mike Shanahan, but it's a harder conversation.
Is there a window to potentially seeing Sean Payton on that list?
Or several seasons away from that.
Okay.
But maybe. But we got to have him for.
Yeah.
He's got to be here for the next 5
years.
And
he would have to.
And we'd have to
win a ring or two.
Oh, yeah. Oh, easily.
Yeah.
If he's here for the next 5 years, we win 2 rings.
Yeah. There's no doubt.
I'm having that conversation.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. It's a fun conversation. And it's one that I think it's one. And it's a fun conversation, and it's one that I think in terms of another conversation we'll certainly be having, and that is who's a better general manager? Is it John Elway or Joe Sakic? I'm saying Joe Sakic, but we'll probably table that one for another time. And of course, we'll have more in terms of a Denver Broncos discussion, training camp battles, and much more on the Manely Broncos podcast. To everybody that chimed on this chat, Josh, Biggie Bronco, Bobby, Avatar, Robert, Ray, and of course, Ty Walden and Graham. Thank you so much for chiming in. Pablo for a little bit. So thank you guys so much for chopping it with us. And thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of the Manely Broncos podcast.
Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, 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 go. Hustle hard, hustle every single day. I'll be making